Okay, let's unpack this. We are doing a deep dive into, well, the definitive rulebook for America's newest military branch, the United States Space Force, the USSF. Sort of feels like a tech startup with uniforms sometimes, but the reality is built on very specific foundational doctrine.
And that's the key. If you really want to understand the identity of this new service, you have to look past the rockets, past the satellites. You have to focus on their core asset, the people, the guardians.
Right. I mean, the Army or the Navy, they have centuries of tradition to fall back on. The USSF is building its culture, its structure, its entire training pipeline, really, from the ground up.
And the blueprint for this whole experiment, this radical approach, is an official document. It's Space Doctrine Publication 10, or SDP 10 Personnel. It's from September 2022.
And that document, it sets the common framework for how they plan to organize, develop, and sustain the modern space warfighter.
Exactly. But it's crucial for you, the listener, to remember this isn't some rigid regulatory manual. They actually call it official advice.
Official advice. I like that.
Yeah. It's the informed starting point for their leadership. It establishes a baseline for what they see as the best way to maximize the human capital in the service.
So our mission today is to get into the 4 pillars of Guardian success that they've laid out. First, the structure they use to stay agile. Then the force development process, so how they train people.
Then there's this emphasis on deep personal resilience, and finally, their mandate for seamless global integration.
And the big takeaway right from the start is that the USSF is intentionally trying to be lean, agile, and decentralized.
Absolutely. They are explicitly capitalizing on the diverse skills, the outside expertise of their people, especially those who transfer in from other services or even the civilian world. This is not a service built on seniority. It's built on skill.
Okay, so let's start with that structure, because it sounds fundamentally different from, the giant org charts you might see in the Air Force or the Navy. Chief of Space Operations, the CSO, he specifically directed the USSF to be an empowered, lean, and agile service. How does that actually look?
Well, it looks like a highly streamlined structure. It all runs through just 3 primary field commands, or field comms, and they all support the Office of the Chief of Space Operations. So instead of dozens of huge layered commands, you have these 3 distinct pillars.
3 pillars designed to handle the core functions of any military service, right?
Yeah.
Operations, acquisition, and training.
Exactly.
So who does what? Let's run through those 3.
Okay, first, and probably the most visible one, is Space Operations Command, SPOC.
SPOC.
This is their operational engine. SPOC is responsible for generating, presenting, and sustaining the combat-ready Guardians for their missions, operations, intelligence, combat support. If a Guardian is actively fighting or running a mission, they're almost certainly under SPOC.
Got it. So they provide the fighters. Who provides the fighting tools?
That would be the Space Systems Command, or SSC. This command is all about speed and capability. Their whole reason for being is to deliver new space capabilities at, and this is the key phrase, operationally relevant speeds. They cover the entire life cycle: development, acquisition, fueling, and then sustaining those capabilities.
So they make sure the operators get the latest tech, like now, not in 10 years.
That's the goal. And finally, you've got the engine of expertise that feeds those first 2. Space Training and Readiness Command, STARCOM.
STARCOM. I can guess their role, but what's their specific mandate in the doctrine?
STARCOM's job is, well, it's holistic preparation. They prepare every Guardian to win. They do that by developing and conducting education, training, doctrine, wargaming, test and evaluation, all of it.
So STARCOM is kind of the intellectual heart and the proving ground for the whole service.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
So if SPOC is the warfighter and SSC is the hardware builder, STARCOM is like the feeder school and the doctrine writer. It keeps everyone and everything state-of-the-art. It feels incredibly focused.
It is focused, but it still has to plug into the giant machinery of the Department of Defense. And that's where you get concepts like the Component Field Command, the CFLD-COM.
Okay, wait, let's pause there. That sounds like jargon, but I feel like it's important. What is the CFLD-COM actually doing?
It's how the USSF integrates at the joint force level. The USSF relies heavily on, active duty airmen, civilians, reservists, guardsmen. The CFLD-COM makes sure all those different uniforms and specialties are speaking the exact same language when they report to a unified combatant commander.
So it's about making sure space effects are seamlessly integrated into everything else.
Yeah.
Land, sea, air, cyber.
Exactly. It enables that joint lethality.
And that deep focus on integration leads us right into the heart of how they develop a Guardian, the expertise pipeline. Because if they're that lean, they just can't afford to have people idling in the wrong job. They have to maximize every single person's talent.
100%. And Chapter 3 of the Doctrine gets right into this. Force development is a dynamic process. It integrates training, education, and experience. They call it TE.
TE. Okay. And what's really fascinating here is the clear statement that there is no single pathway, no rigid definition of what a successful career looks like.
So they're not just on one track for their whole career.
Not at all. The focus is on investing in the individual, matching their interests and their unique strengths with what the service needs, which is always changing.
But before they specialize, every guardian needs a shared foundation. I saw the Doctrine formalizes 4 guardian values. Let's see. Character, connection, commitment, and courage. That sounds like a pretty standard, honorable military value set.
Yeah.
But what makes it unique to the Space Force?
That's a great question. If you look at commitment to mastery, that speaks directly to the crazy pace of space technology. It's basically a mandate for lifelong learning. And connection toward unity is also key. Space warfighting relies on these small, super tight-knit, multidisciplinary teams.
Right, in these hyper-technical environments.
Exactly. If they don't have absolute trust and connection, the mission fails. These values are really designed for high-stakes, low-density operations. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The competency tiers. They measure progress not just by rank, but by these specific levels of expertise. That feels, well, disruptive to traditional military culture.
It is fundamentally different. They have 4 levels. Level 1 is basic proficiency. Level 2 is intermediate. Level 3 is advanced. And level 4 is expert. And the Doctrine says advancement isn't dependent on rank or time in service. It's about mastering those competencies.
So it's less about the patch on your sleeve and more about verifiable mastery, almost like belt colors in martial arts or something.
It's a perfect analogy.
A Specialist 4 who masters space electronic warfare could be seen as more proficient than, say, a captain who hasn't hit those tiers yet.
Precisely. It totally changes the dynamic of how you use people and lets the USSF really capitalize on someone's previous experience, especially if they transfer in with a unique skill set. And the technical training is incredibly specific. Most of it's delivered by the 319th Combat Training Squadron.
And that's where they teach the space power discipline courses, the SPD courses. What kind of disciplines are we talking about?
We're talking about the core warfighting stuff. Orbital warfare, space electronic warfare, space battle management, and military intelligence, but all tailored specifically for the space domain.
Okay.
They also mentioned that the foundational SPD 100 course is moving to an online delivery format, which, again, is another nod to that agility.
So once they get that core discipline down, they move on to mission qualification training for specific weapon systems, MQT. And then there's advanced training, like the Ready Space Crew program, which seems to focus on integrating cyber and intel for full mastery.
And tying all of this technical training together is the digital imperative. The CSO's vision is to create a digital service to accelerate innovation. This means every Guardian is expected to pursue digital fluency courses through their digital university.
And the most talked about part of this digital push has to be the supercoders. This sounds like something from a movie, but the Doctrine treats them as a core part of the force.
Oh, they absolutely are. Supercoders are Guardians who go through this intensive software engineering curriculum. Their mission isn't just to maintain old systems, it's to join agile software teams in the field and rapidly develop, deploy, and update software.
Okay, but is it realistic to expect an operator who is already an expert in orbital warfare to also be a full-time, high-level software developer? It feels like asking someone to have 2 incredibly technical careers at the same time.
The Doctrine recognizes how intense that is, but the goal is velocity. It's speed. They need people who can modify mission-critical software on the fly, maybe even mid-operation, without waiting for some long contracting process. The supercoder is an organizational fix for bureaucratic slowness.
So rapid software iteration is seen as a key competitive advantage.
A huge advantage in a contested space domain, yes.
Okay, so we have the technical engine, training, digital mastery. But a great space warfighter needs more than just technical skill. They need strategic context. And that brings us to formal education and experience.
Exactly. You need the big picture. So professional military education, PME, and continuing education, PCE, are key. Courses from the National Security Space Institute and SSI, like Space 100, 200, and 300, are designed to broaden that understanding of policy, strategy, and capabilities.
And for experience, they clearly value diversity. They're actively encouraging assignments outside the normal military chain of command, aren't they?
Absolutely. Beyond just standard joint assignments, they highlight programs like education with industry, EWI, and also postings with non-military government agencies like NASA or the Department of Commerce. You need to know how the whole ecosystem works.
That focus on the human factor, on that T framework, leads us right into the third pillar, resilience. We usually think of military readiness in terms of hardware or physical fitness, but this doctrine defines resilience, the ability to recover from hardship, as a critical part of warfighting effectiveness.
It's right there in the text. Strengthening resilience has a direct impact on unit cohesion and therefore on the lethality of the unit. It's an explicit commitment for every leader. So you have your standard programs like coaching and mentoring and strong diversity and inclusion guidance.
The doctrine also specifically calls out prevention efforts for things like sexual assault, harassment, suicide, and violence. Why call those out in a document about personnel development?
Because the goal is cohesion and morale. The document is very clear that these things undermine unit readiness. So getting rid of these internal problems isn't just a cultural priority, it's a shared responsibility that directly improves your ability to fight a war. If your team is fractured, it doesn't matter how good your satellites are.
Okay, now for the surprising detail that really got my attention, the cool factor that shows how broadly they define well-being. They explicitly support gaming.
That's right. The doctrine mentions the Air Force Services Center manages the eSports Space Force gaming program. It's their official competition hub. And the document specifies that this program is designed to bolster resilience, forge camaraderie, and get this hone warrior lethality.
So, the future of warfighting readiness means less time on a traditional obstacle course and more time coordinating complex digital operations. And they're using eSports to practice that. That is a definitive shift in what readiness means for a military service.
It says everything about the future fight, doesn't it? The skills you need for competitive gaming, rapid decision-making, distributed team communication, strategic planning under pressure are highly transferable to space ops.
Which moves us to our final pillar, the global perspective. Guardians aren't just space experts. They have to be masterful joint warfighters, seamlessly integrated with everyone else.
That joint requirement is foundational. They have to master the concepts, doctrine, and practices to integrate with all the other services to deliver space effects across every domain.
And the partnerships go way beyond the U.S. military, right? To allies, partners, establishing common norms of behavior in space. What are the specific ways they embed this global perspective into a Guardian's career?
There are two big ones for immersive experience. First is the Military Personnel Exchange Program. You get Guardians serving in foreign commands and vice versa. And second is the use of liaison officers, or LNOs, who are there to reduce friction and sync up action between the USSF and allied organizations.
But the real aha moment for me in the doctrine when it comes to global leadership is the Regional Space Advisor Program, the RSA program. It sounds like they're creating a specific track for strategic diplomats.
That's a perfect description. The RSA program is a deliberate career-broadening path. These aren't just tech experts. They're Guardian leaders who get advanced training in leadership, space policy, political military affairs, plus regional and cultural expertise.
So an RSA has to know their core space discipline inside and out, but also needs the cultural and linguistic skill to, brief a foreign defense minister on the politics of orbital debris.
Precisely. They are space diplomats who can advocate for and execute space policy on the world stage.
And they don't stop there. They also emphasize integration with interagency partners and academia. Guardians were placed at the National Reconnaissance Office, NASA, the Department of Commerce.
And critically, their relationship with universities is formalized through the University Partnership Program, or UPP. These are strategic partnerships with top universities focusing on STEM and space research. It's about developing the workforce and collaborating on long-term science and technology problems. It's how they build their talent pipeline.
So as we wrap this up, it's clear the USSF is building a completely unique, highly focused personnel structure. We've seen this shift to flexible career paths based on competency, a radical commitment to digital mastery with things like supercoders, and this huge emphasis on global acumen through the RSA program.
And we have to remember the context. The USSF mission relies so heavily on the broader Department of the Air Force. Active duty airmen, reservists, guardsmen, they provide the essential support. Personnel, legal, security, all of it. The Guardians are the specialized operators, but they need that huge direct infrastructure to even exist.
It's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
The USSF is building not just operators or technicians, but adaptable, resilient, globally focused leaders. The document shows that they believe a Guardian's ability to win depends equally on mastering orbital warfare and on their ability to lead diverse teams, maintain resilience through eSports, and possess the acumen of a regional space advisor.
And that raises a really important question for you to think about. Which of those two pillars, the deep technical mastery of the space domain or that leadership adaptability and global perspective, which one will ultimately prove most critical in shaping the future of space power for the United States? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.